The film begins with a vehicle transporting high-profile prisoners is shown making its way to the most secure prison in Russia. Among the prisoners is a man named Craven, who appears relaxed, almost as if he's enjoying the ride. Upon arrival at the prison, the long-term inmates shout at Craven and the others, taunting them and claiming they won't survive a month. The next day, while Craven is exercising, 2 inmates approach him, intending to teach him a lesson. But Craven remains calm and effortlessly takes them down. That night, Craven is visited by the henchman of the prison's mafia boss, who rules the facility with an iron fist. The boss wants to meet him. This mafia leader is a notorious criminal, responsible for the deaths of dozens of women, children, and men across the globe. When Craven is brought before him, the boss demands to know who he is and why he's been sent to the prison. Craven coolly explains that he is Craven the Hunter, and the only reason he's there is to eliminate the mafia boss. The boss laughs, dismissing Craven as nothing more than a myth. He orders his men to kill Craven, but the tables quickly turn. Craven dispatches the boss and his henchmen with brutal efficiency. After the confrontation, Craven turns his attention to the prison guards, launching an attack in an attempt to escape. Despite their efforts to stop him, Craven proves to be an unstoppable force, and he manages to break free. The scene then shifts to several years earlier, showing 2 brothers, Sergei and Dmitry, who are students. One day, they are called to the school gates because their father, Nikolai, has come to pick them up. During the drive, Nikolai reveals that their mother has just died after doing the unthinkable. Sergei immediately blames Nikolai, accusing him of driving their mother to depression by divorcing her. At that moment, Dmitry asks if they will attend their mother's funeral, but Nikolai coldly replies that they will not, as those who die by doing the unthinkable do not deserve honor. Instead, Nikolai explains that he has taken them out of school to go on a hunting trip to Africa. Elsewhere, a young woman named Calypso is seen talking to her grandmother. Suddenly, the grandmother hands Calypso a mysterious potion, a family heirloom passed down through generations for hundreds of years. According to her grandmother, the potion has the power to heal anyone who drinks it and can also unlock a gateway to another world. Back in Africa, Nikolai, Sergei, and Dmitry are now on a hunting expedition, accompanied by Nikolai's loyal men. It is revealed that Nikolai is the head of a powerful European mafia with a large number of devoted followers. During the hunt, Nikolai successfully shoots a deer, which fills him with pride. However, he takes the opportunity to tell Sergei that their true prey is not a deer but a massive lion, a symbol of savagery and dominance. The next day, as Nikolai and the others had trekked deep into the wilderness, a seemingly awkward man named Alexei approached Nikolai. It turned out that Alexei had joined the hunting expedition after being invited by one of Nikolai's men. At that moment, Alexei timidly suggested that they take a break, as they had been walking for hours. He also mentioned that he suffered from a medical condition and needed to rest. Hearing this, Nikolai responded with arrogance, stating that someone as weak and sickly as Alexei might as well die, as their life would never be of any use. A few hours later, while Sergei and Dmitry were talking privately, they suddenly encountered a massive lion. At first, Sergei raised his rifle, intending to shoot the beast, but for some reason, he hesitated. Overcome with pity, he lowered his weapon. However, from behind, Nikolai fired a shot, wounding the lion and sending it into a furious rage. The lion lunged at Sergei, mauling him before dragging his body away into the wilderness. Meanwhile, in another part of the savannah, Calypso was seen with her parents, photographing the wildlife. After a while, Calypso wandered off alone and stumbled upon the lion, carrying Sergei's limp body. Strangely, the lion suddenly released Sergei, and in the process, some of the lion's blood mixed with Sergei's wounds, mysteriously altering his DNA. As the lion disappeared into the distance, Calypso acted quickly, administering the potion her grandmother had given her. She then called for her parents to help. Soon after, a rescue helicopter arrived to transport Sergei to the hospital. Before he was taken away, Calypso slipped her lucky charm into his hand, along with the small amount of potion that remained. At the hospital, doctors worked tirelessly to save Sergei's life using advanced medical equipment. Despite their efforts, Sergei cannot be saved. However, moments later, in a miraculous turn of events, Sergei came back to life after being clinically dead for several minutes. 2 hours later, Dmitry and Nikolai arrived at the hospital to check on Sergei. Nikolai immediately thanked the doctors for saving his son's life, but the doctors humbly replied that it was not their doing. It was a miracle from God. Back at home, Nikolai confronted Sergei about his hesitation to shoot the lion, despite having the perfect opportunity. Nikolai compared Sergei to his mother, calling her weak and cowardly during her lifetime. To drive his point home, Nikolai revealed something to Sergei, the severed head of the lion he had killed. Seeing this, Sergei was filled with anger, accusing his father of killing the lion merely to prove his own strength. After a heated argument, Sergei secretly took some money and his passport, planning to run away from home. As he prepared to leave, he made sure to take Calypso's lucky charm and the remaining potion that had saved his life. That night, Sergei made a daring escape by climbing onto the roof. Unfortunately, he slipped and fell. To his surprise, he effortlessly regained his balance, leaving him momentarily confused. When Sergei finally reached the edge of the house, he found Dmitry waiting for him, visibly disappointed that Sergei was leaving. With a heavy heart, Dmitry told Sergei to go and not worry about him anymore. The story then shifts to Sergei arriving at a vast savanna. Not long after, he was startled by the sudden appearance of a massive bull charging toward him. Cornered and with no way out, Sergei resigned himself to his fate. But strangely, one of the bulls stood protectively in front of him, as if bowing to Sergei. Once the herd had passed, the bull finally left Sergei alone. After this encounter, Sergei decided to stay in the forest, where he began to train and hone his newfound abilities. He discovered he could run at incredible speeds and even launch attacks from a distance. Some time later, Sergei heard a noise and climbed a tree to investigate. What he saw alarmed him. He quickly descended and ran toward the source of the sound. When Sergei arrived, he found the bodies of several bulls, their horns brutally removed. Moments later, 2 hunters appeared and ordered Sergei to leave. It turned out they were the ones who had slaughtered the bulls, harvesting their valuable horns. When Sergei refused to leave, the hunters threatened to kill him. But the outcome was not what they expected. After defeating the hunters, Sergei was both terrified and amazed by the sheer power he possessed. From that moment on, he vowed to use his abilities to fight against evil. He decided to make the forest his home and adopted a new name, Kraven. The story then returns to the present, where Kraven, formerly Sergei, has just returned from the Russian prison. He arrives at his secluded home in the forest and decides to rest for an extended period. A few days later, a group of mercenaries is seen transporting the horns of slaughtered bulls, preparing to sell them illegally. After loading the horns into their vehicle, they hastily drive away. However, their escape is short-lived, as they are suddenly confronted by Kraven. At that moment, he demands to know why they would mercilessly kill the bulls just for their horns. Ignoring him, the mercenaries try to drive off, but Kraven slips under their vehicle and begins to take them down one by one. After dealing with the mercenaries, Kraven realizes that one of their vehicles managed to escape. Later that evening, the surviving mercenary arrives in the city to report to his boss. He claims that someone had disrupted their operation earlier, but assures his boss that the situation has been handled. However, when the boss turns around, it is revealed to be Kraven, who has already eliminated the mercenary's boss. The scene shifts to Calypso, now an adult working as a lawyer. She is attending the funeral of her mentor, who was killed by a gangster. After the service, Calypso is approached by Kraven. He thanks her for saving his life years ago when he was attacked by the lion. Kraven also returns her lucky charm and the remaining potion she had given him. He then asks who was responsible for her mentor's death. Calypso reveals it was a gangster, to which Kraven calmly replies that the perpetrator has already been dealt by him. That night, Calypso checks the news online and confirms that the gangster has indeed been killed by a mysterious figure, who turns out to be Kraven. The next day, Calypso and Kraven meet again in a park to talk. Kraven explains that after drinking the potion she gave him, he gained extraordinary abilities, akin to the strength and instincts of a lion. He expresses his gratitude to Calypso, as these powers have allowed him to fight for justice and eliminate cruel criminals. He then hands her a copy of a list containing the names of the criminals he plans to target next. The story then shifts to Alexei, the once awkward and sickly man who had asked Nikolai for a break during the hunting trip. Now Alexei has transformed into a brutal figure with a large following. Soon after, his right-hand man, Bert, informs Alexei that the mafia boss who ruled the Russian prison has been killed by someone. Bert suggests that Alexei is the perfect candidate to take over the boss's position. It is revealed that the mafia boss in question is the same one Kraven eliminated before. The next day, Alexei holds a meeting with the high-ranking members of the prison mafia. He demands their loyalty, claiming that since their boss is dead, they should now follow him. Unexpectedly, they refuse and even attempt to shoot Alexei. However, to their shock, Alexei suddenly rises, having mutated into a rhino-like creature. It is revealed that Alexei, once weak and sickly, was given a serum by a doctor, which granted him his monstrous transformation. At the same time, Alexei's sniper, one of his loyal henchmen, takes out most of the mafia members, leaving only 2 alive. Alexei coldly states that he only needs one loyal subordinate, prompting the 2 survivors to turn on each other. That evening, the scene shifts to Nikolai, who is attending Dmitri's birthday party. Dmitri entertains the guests, including his father, by playing the piano. Suddenly, one of Alexei's newly recruited henchmen approaches Nikolai and asks if he and his group will submit to Alexei's authority. Nikolai flatly refuses, prompting an attack from Alexei's men. After the chaos, Dmitri is disappointed that his birthday celebration has been ruined. However, Nikolai scolds him for hiding behind the piano instead of standing up to protect his father. Nikolai harshly criticizes Dmitri, calling him a coward and expressing his disdain for having a weak son. Meanwhile, Alexei is visibly frustrated after his men fail to eliminate Nikolai. Bert approaches him, holding a flash drive that had been mysteriously delivered to them. When they check its contents, they find footage of Kraven escaping from the Russian prison. This confirms that Kraven is the one who killed the mafia boss who ruled the prison. The flash drive also contains Kraven's full identity, revealing his real name, Sergei, the son of Nikolai. Knowing this, Bert immediately warns Alexei that Sergei has been targeting high-profile criminals, and Alexei is now on his list. It's only a matter of time before Sergei comes for him. The next day, Sergei secretly scales the apartment building where Dmitri lives. Once inside, he surprises Dmitri, wishing him a belated happy birthday. Overjoyed, Dmitri pleads with Sergei to stay with him for a few days to celebrate. He then invites Sergei to dinner at a bar owned by their father. During the meal, Dmitri opens up about his disappointment with their father, Nikolai, who constantly belittles him for not being strong or brutal enough. Dmitri admits he can't live up to his expectations. As they talk, Nikolai unexpectedly arrives and joins them. The atmosphere becomes awkward between Nikolai and Sergei, but they both try to keep the mood light for Dmitri's sake. Eventually, Dmitri drinks himself into a stupor, and Sergei takes him back to his apartment. Before passing out, Dmitri begs Sergei not to leave him alone for the next few days. When Sergei tries to sleep, he finds himself unable to rest comfortably inside the apartment. Instead, he chooses to sleep in a nearby park. The next morning, Sergei returns to the apartment, only to find Dmitri's room in disarray and Dmitri missing. As a result, Sergei rushes outside, just in time to see a car speeding away with Dmitri inside. Without hesitation, he gives chase. The pursuit is intense, and Sergei nearly catches up, but the kidnappers manage to escape. The car eventually stops by a lakeside, where a helicopter is waiting to transport Dmitri and his captors. Sergei arrives moments later, desperately trying to save his brother, but the helicopter takes off before he can reach them. It's revealed that the kidnappers are mercenaries hired by Alexei. Furious and determined, Sergei heads to Calypso's office to seek her help in tracking down the kidnappers. He describes the leader of the group, whom he briefly saw inside the helicopter. Calypso assures him that her extensive network can help locate the kidnappers' hideout. She contacts one of her informants, providing the description Sergei gave her, and begins the search. Not long after, Sergei visits Nikolai's residence to ask who might be responsible for Dmitri's kidnapping. Nikolai suggests it could be one of his many business rivals, but with so many enemies, he can't pinpoint who exactly is behind it. He then shows Sergei a package he recently received. Inside is one of Dmitri's fingers, along with a ransom demand for $20 million to be paid within 48 hours. Shocked, Sergei urges Nikolai to pay the ransom to save Dmitri. However, Nikolai refuses, explaining that this isn't about money, it's about pride. If he pays the ransom, his enemies will see him as weak, and his reputation will be ruined. That night, Calypso meets with her informant, who reveals that the leader of the kidnappers is from Turkey and operates from a hideout near a cliff. Armed with this information, Calypso immediately contacts Sergei to relay the details. Without wasting any time, Sergei heads to the kidnappers' hideout and infiltrates it silently. Inside, he takes down the kidnappers one by one, searching for Dmitri. Eventually, he corners the leader of the group and demands to know where Dmitri is. Before the kidnapper can answer, Alexei's men launch a missile at the hideout, aiming to eliminate Sergei. Fortunately, Sergei reacts quickly and escapes the blast. With the kidnapper now mortally wounded, Sergei interrogates him again. The man confesses that he handed Dmitri over to the person who hired him, Alexei, also known as Rhino. 15 minutes later, Alexei's men arrive at the scene, searching for Sergei's body, convinced he must be dead. But Sergei ambushes them, killing them all. He then finds a phone on one of the men and begins examining it for clues. The scene shifts to Calypso, who is at her office when she receives a call from Sergei. He warns her that Alexei has discovered her identity and has likely sent men after her. As Sergei speaks, Calypso notices 5 suspicious individuals entering her office building. She quickly decides to leave through the back exit. Meanwhile, Dmitri is being held captive by Alexei's men. At that moment, Alexei questions Dmitri about the legend of Kraven the Hunter. Dmitri dismisses it as a myth created to scare criminals. Alexei then shows him a video of Kraven in action, revealing that the so-called myth is none other than Sergei, Dmitri's older brother. As a result, Dmitri is stunned. A few hours later, Alexei receives word that Nikolai has refused to pay the $20 million ransom for Dmitri. Alexei sympathizes with Dmitri, acknowledging how Nikolai has always dismissed and belittled him, treating him as weak. Alexei then shares his own story, explaining how 10 years ago, he met a biochemist named Dr. Warren, who transformed his life with a serum. This serum gave Alexei immense strength and earned him the respect he craved. He reveals that the only way to neutralize his powers is by injecting a fluid serum into his side. Meanwhile, Calypso finds her way to Sergei, who immediately suggests that she stay with him in the forest for the time being, as it will be safer for her while Alexei's men are hunting her. As they make their way deeper into the woods, Calypso asks Sergei if he's been living in the forest all this time, to which he confirms. Suddenly, Sergei signals for Calypso to stay quiet, sensing that something is watching them. Out of nowhere, a white tiger attacks him. After a brief struggle, the tiger retreats, leaving them unharmed. At that moment, Sergei explains to Calypso that the white tiger is an old friend of his, one who was simply checking in on him. When they finally arrive at Sergei's secluded home in the heart of the forest, Calypso admires the peaceful atmosphere, expressing how much she likes the simplicity of his life here. The scene shifts back to Alexei's hideout, where an intruder has been detected. Just as Alexei's men prepare to eliminate the trespasser, they suddenly fall under a hypnotic trance, allowing the intruder to slip past them effortlessly. The intruder introduces himself as the Foreigner, a skilled mercenary who wants to join forces with Alexei to take down Sergei, also known as Kraven. The Foreigner reveals that he has a personal vendetta against Sergei, as he killed his brother years ago. Despite searching for Sergei for years, the Foreigner has always lost his trail. In addition to his combat skills, the Foreigner possesses unique abilities. He can manipulate time, hypnotize his enemies, and strike before they even realize what's happening. After sharing his story, the Foreigner informs Alexei that he has received information about Sergei and Calypso currently hiding in the Siberian forest. He urges Alexei to mobilize their forces and head there immediately. Soon after, Alexei's group arrives at the edge of the Siberian forest. Before entering, Alexei forces Dmitry to call Sergei using a private number only he knows. When the call connects, Alexei taunts Sergei, telling him to surrender before he's killed. Sergei, unfazed, ends the call without a word. He then prepares for the inevitable confrontation, knowing Alexei's men are closing in. As Alexei's group advances deeper into the forest, they are ambushed by the white tiger, which attacks them with ferocity. After the tiger's assault, Sergei emerges, taking down Alexei's men one by one. Realizing his forces are dwindling, Alexei calls in a helicopter to attack Sergei. During the chaos, the foreigner manages to hit Sergei with a poison dart, causing him to hallucinate terrifying visions of spiders swarming around him. Despite being struck twice more by the poison, Sergei refuses to give up and continues to fight back against the foreigner. Unfortunately, the poison had spread through Sergei's body, leaving him helpless and on the verge of collapse. Just as the foreigner was about to deliver the final blow, Calypso suddenly appeared and shot him dead. She rushed to Sergei's side, who was now barely clinging to life due to the poison. For the second time, Calypso administered the miraculous potion, reviving Sergei and restoring his strength. With renewed vigor, Sergei was ready to fight again. Meanwhile, Bert approached Alexei, confidently reporting that Sergei had been killed by the foreigner. Bert claimed to have witnessed the foreigner bringing Sergei to the brink of death before finishing him off. Hearing this, Alexei was overjoyed, and they quickly prepared to leave. As they crossed a vast field, a herd of massive bulls suddenly stampeded toward them. Not wanting to die a foolish death, Alexei fully transformed into his rhino mutation. At the same time, Sergei appeared out of nowhere and launched an attack. However, Alexei in his fully mutated form proved to be a formidable opponent, overwhelming Sergei. Just as Alexei cornered him, Sergei noticed a scar on Alexei's side, the spot where he injected the serum to neutralize his powers. Without hesitation, Sergei targeted the weak point, striking it with precision. He then tied Alexei up and threw him into the path of the stampeding bulls. As a result, Alexei was trampled to death, succumbing to fatal injuries. 3 days later, Sergei confronted his father, Nikolai, who was hunting bears in a Russian forest. Sergei expressed his disappointment, revealing that Nikolai had been the one to send the flash drive containing the footage of him to Alexei. It was revealed that Nikolai's plan was to pit Sergei and Alexei against each other, allowing him to seize control of the mafia's operations. Nikolai had also shown no concern for Dmitry's safety, prioritizing power over his own son's life. After voicing his anger, Sergei left Nikolai behind, taking some of his father's bullets with him. Moments later, a bear attacked Nikolai, killing him. A year later, Sergei reunited with Dmitry. The two shared a heartfelt moment, catching up on lost time. Dmitry mentioned that he had become braver after meeting a certain doctor. Before he could elaborate, a group of mafia members approached Dmitry, revealing that he had taken over Nikolai's ambitions and become the new mafia boss. This revelation shocked and disappointed Sergei, leading to a heated argument between the brothers. As Dmitry turned to leave, Sergei tried to stop him, but Dmitry suddenly transformed, his face shifting to resemble Sergei's. It was then revealed that Dmitry had sought out Dr. Warren, the same biochemist who had transformed Alexei into the rhino. Now, Dmitry possessed the ability to shapeshift into anyone he desired. In the final scene, Sergei returned home and found a letter written by his late father. In the letter, Nikolai claimed that he and Sergei were both hunters, no different from one another. Sergei also discovered a vest made of animal hide, which he immediately put on. He sat down, reflecting on his journey and the man he had become. The film ends with Sergei gazing at his reflection, a look of deep meaning in his eyes. Moral lesson from the story: if you're ever attacked by a lion and your DNA gets mixed with its blood, don't panic. You might just gain superpowers and become a legendary hunter. But remember, if your brother turns into a shape-shifting mafia boss, maybe just stick to fighting bulls in the forest.